Is it possible to become too familiar with trauma? I mean, of course, it's possible to become too familiar with trauma, and it becomes even more debilitating because you are so familiar with it. Hello, I'm Dr. David Hawkins, Director of the Marriage Recovery Center and the Emotional Abuse Institute. And I want to give you 5 things to think about when it comes to the dangerousness of familiarity with trauma. The dangerousness of familiarity with trauma. Well, first of all, let's think about this. I want you to imagine that you're living in a situation where there is an incredible storm, and there's a great deal of wind and rain and so on, and it's scary, it's frightening for you. But now let's imagine that it goes on day after day after day after day. Well, you see where I'm going with this. At some point, we start to adjust, we start to adapt, we start to cope, we start to accommodate. And those words are often seen as positive things, but they're not necessarily always positive. When we adapt, cope, accommodate to something very, very troubling. And so if we're not very, very careful, we could end up settling for trauma. Not that you would ever want it, not that you have done anything to ask for it, but you could end up settling and find yourself somewhere down the road saying, my goodness, how has this happened? There's so much trauma in my life, trauma around me, and I'm just in the middle of it day in, day out, day in, day out. So, second point, familiarity with trauma can lead to forgetting what is normal. When I counsel, and if I'm doing a couples session and the perpetrator is dismissive, defensive, and I model empathy and validation, the victim of abuse often starts crying. And when it happened the first time, it took me by surprise. Like, what are you crying about? And the victim of emotional abuse said, that never happens. My feelings are never empathized with. I never feel validated. I never feel fully heard. And so there can be a forgetting, understandably, of what is normal, so that we have our bearings like, okay, that's what it should sound like. That's what it should feel like. That's what should be going on in my world. Point number 3. Of course, the traumatic, narcissistic, and emotional abuse is often reinforced by the perpetrator of that abuse. And so you are told repeatedly, there's nothing wrong here. There's nothing wrong here. And if anything's wrong, you're the one making it wrong. Crazy making. So you struggle to create normalcy, and the perpetrator says, no, that's not normal. I mean, my anger isn't really anger. It's just, I'm just passionate. No, I didn't defend myself. I mean, you were criticizing me, so I gave you an explanation, or any number of ways to not say I was wrong and I am sorry and I can see the impact on you. That's what should happen, by the way. So the dangerousness of familiarity with trauma is that it can happen consistently, pervasively. It can lead to settling. It can lead to forgetting what's normal, and your reality can be dismissed again and again and again and again. Point number 4. All of this, the familiarity, the dangerousness of familiarity with trauma can be exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. That's the number 1 symptom that victims of emotional abuse share with me. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to try to say, no, no, that's not what happened. No, no, you did say that. No, no, that's wrong. No, no, that's bad. That's hurtful. That's harmful. All of that is exhausting. I had a person say to me recently, you know, I can make a point. I can declare what is true for me, but it comes at such a great cost. It's a burden. It'll come winging back on me for sure. I'll get blamed for sure. I'll get hurt for sure for bringing my truth into a situation. So that leads to point number 5. So what do we do now? Point number 5. Support and effective counsel are absolutely critical. If you have slipped into the dangerousness of familiarity with trauma, my goodness, you've got to get really good support. You've got to get counsel from someone who understands trauma and emotional abuse. And they need to help you get your head above water so that you can see what is going on and the harmfulness of what's going on, so that you get at least one thing, and that is clarity. Clarity. And by the way, that is a breath of fresh air. Clarity. This is what is really going on. And here are some steps I can now take to more effectively cope with your situation. All right, the dangerousness of familiarity with trauma. I hope this has been helpful, and please know that we at the Marriage Recovery Center and the Emotional Abuse Institute, we are focused on helping individuals overcome victimization by narcissistic and emotional abuse, and helping the perpetrator become healthy individuals. And we have a client care team ready to take your calls. All right, take care and God bless.